Hi there, it's Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder here with this week's episode of the Tuesday Brewsday. Not a new brew today, but a spin on last week's brew with the good old Silver Smote Ghoul and the Griffin Ari. You can go and check out last week's video to get all caught up for what we've been building on. This is going to be a less control version and a more aggressive version. And it's going to have a couple of trade-offs. It's going to have a little bit less or worse of a matchup versus things like, I would say, Food and Gruel. But it should have a better matchup versus the control decks where you have to add even more threats to actually get by before they get their win conditions out. So this is about a 50-50 deck. You win about 50% of the time. It has decent matchups versus Yorion and Rogues. It has decent matchups versus Gruel. However, this deck does struggle from the Great Henge. I still think there needs to be a lot done to Standard before we have a balanced Standard. I don't know why Wizard of the Coast is refusing to do anything about the meta when there are basically three decks that just keep rock, paper, scissoring that are over 20% of the meta. From week to week, it depends on how dominant Great Henge is. Great Henge has been as dominant as 60% of the decks on any given week will have 3 copies of the Great Henge, or you can actually put Lovestruck Beast. One of the biggest issues with the way they design Throne of Eldraine is not only do they print a card like the Great Henge that gets a lot of value by being reduced by creatures that have high power, they arguably printed the best card ever to pair with the Great Henge in the form of Lovestruck Beast, and then were able to pair that with the adventure theme, or at least the adventurer that draws cards off of it, so it makes it less of a liability. And Lovestruck Beast also now synergizes with the Elemental, the 1/1 Elemental that you can either make a 3/3 by playing a land, but if you don't play a land, you can actually attack in with your Lovestruck Beast. So I think that it's just they've just had the perfect scenario happen for all the cards for Throne of Eldraine just to be very, very pushed, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the cards in the format. I wish they'd just rotate Throne of Eldraine out. Just say, yeah, it was a mistake of a set. Let's see what Standard would look like without Throne, because Throne has just layers upon layers of problematic cards. The other thing I would suggest for the format is to ban companions. I think that the companion mechanic is still a mistake, even if it is required for you to pay that mana to put it into your hand. That is not enough to keep the Yorion and the Lurrus decks from being able to be, in my opinion, too unfair for that ability. So none of the other companions are seeing play because they're just not good. And that's the problem with Lurrus and Yorion, and I put the Osbadoth in that category as well, is it's just the decks that they're seeing play in. Like 20 cards is not bad in this format. It's arguable that you want 20 cards versus all of the various mill decks like Rogues, and there also is just a very straightforward mill deck that is starting to see more and more play that doesn't even utilize the Rogue, the Rogue tribal. The Yorion, the added cards of 20 is not a big deal, especially with so many redundant cards in that archetype for what Yorion likes to be doing. So I think that they should just bite the bullet here and just ban the companion mechanic in Standard. They can look at it for Pioneer and Modern to see if it's still something that they want to stick around. I personally think that they should ban it in those particular formats too. It was a mistake of a mechanic. I don't think that the tax was enough of a drawback for pushing like the Lurrus decks, or just throwing a one of Lurrus in those decks if they can have them. Like the Rogue deck is running Lurrus. And like I said, the Yorion decks, it's not even a big issue. Just add 20 cards to your deck. So that would be my suggestion, is something like Lovestruck Beast or the Great Henge. I would also get rid of Embercleave, just because I think that even though Embercleave doesn't have the dominance that it's had in the past, it is still a problem card. It is basically the whole reason you're running the green-red adventures over green-black adventures that sees basically no play is Embercleave, because Embercleave can just outright win those games. There's a turn 4 scenario with Embercleave in the green-red that can, with just one card basically, that can just win the game outright by itself if you got in for damage the turn before. And I just played against that turn 4 scenario where I actually did remove my opponent's turn 1 threat, turn 2 threat, and then they got a Mammoth out, and then were able to Fabled Passage, crack it, and then swing in for lethal with the Embercleave. So I think that those scenarios are just bad for Standard. I don't like the Haymaker type feel that we are in with Standard. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I've always loved Pauper, is there aren't really any haymakers in Pauper, that you end up being a kind of tit-for-tat Magic. And if anything, this deck right here is a tit-for-tat Magic. I love synergies, I love recurring value decks, and this deck is a deck that definitely showcases that. Unfortunately, we don't really have any big haymaker finishers, and the problem that we're in with Standard right now is they've balanced the format in the form of Control to be able to beat the haymakers. That Control is also super strong right now for just the ability to generate tons of value in Control shells with many cards that draw 4, draw 5, or if you're looking at like Yorion with flashing or flickering things in, those Control decks can really outvalue even decks that are focused on outvaluing Control decks. And that's kind of the issue with aggro too, when you throw in Great Henge or Vivian or like the Adventure package. Those two are just so good at both putting out threats and drawing just tons and tons of cards. They've just pushed green very hard in these past few years, where it's the complete package. That green is the new blue, where green has the best threats, it's got the best draw, and arguably has the best answers. You have things like Primal Might, and you have the Thrashing Brontodon. They can basically answer anything in the format, and then you pair that with Great Henge, which is just the best engine for drawing cards. At the moment, it stabilizes you, and then you pair it with the best threats as well. Arguably green just is the overall best way to go forward. So this deck, though, does do good versus, like I said, Yorion and Rogues. Those are our good matchups. So I have rambled on about Standard here. Let's get down to the deck tech and the changes. So the big changes is we are going to go the Triton, and we are going to go the other difference is going to be the Golden Egg. So Mire Triton and Golden Egg, I think, synergize better than Revitalize. Revitalize is the better card in the other package, but Revitalize basically is a sorcery speed card because you want to be casting it on your turn, because unfortunately both of the Silver Smoke Ghoul as well as the Griffin Ari say at the beginning of your end step. Kind of wish it didn't say that. I kind of wish it said at the beginning of any end step they'd come back. That would make like the instant speed stuff like the Erebos Intervention. It could also make the Paladin, the Blackblade Paladin, the one that gives itself lifelink and does 3 is a 3/1. Would make these cards a little bit better, but unfortunately it has to be sorcery speed life gain, and I think Golden Egg is just better because then it does synergize with our next addition, which is Loris, the Dream Den. See, this is why I'm saying that both Yorion and Loris are fine as cards. That is where I'm struggling the most with the Magic the Gathering design team, or at least the play designer, whoever is in charge of balancing the format, has just absolutely failed at their job because they pushed these cards that were good enough. They've just picked clear winners in these slots. Like you compare Yorion and Loris to other cards that do similar abilities, a 3/2 lifelink for 3 mana, that's already pretty stinking good. And then the ability to then cast stuff from your graveyard, it just really pushes it over the top, making it more flexible by having that hybrid mana. Then you look at Yorion that has a 4/5 body for 5 mana that flickers everything. They don't need that companion. They absolutely do not need that to make them playable. And I think for that reason, they can just squash that companion clause, and they'd still be good enough to sell their packs and good enough to be played in Standard. The problem too with Adventures is look at Adventures with Lovestruck Beast and Bonecrusher Giant. A 4/3 with a built-in shock. There are very few 4/3s for 3 mana, and it even has the upside of when it gets targeted, you take 2 damage. They have just pushed and pushed and pushed these cards. It is very hard to not play these cards, and I think that is where that is a definition of a bad Standard, when they're forcing you into particular archetypes and forcing you into particular cards where you can't have. That was a whole reason they banned Wild Nacatl originally in Modern, was that why not just play Wild Nacatl and Tarmogoyf? All roads led to playing those 2 cards because it was too tough to justify all of these other 1s and 2 drops when you could just chuck in. You can actually splash. A lot of them were just like splashing green for like Nacatl. If you're already in white and red, throw in Nacatl. If you are already in like a graveyard-based strategy, that's the old joke that Tarmogoyf was a blue card, because you might as well just splash blue or green for a really solid threat with other colors that actually utilize the ability to fill up your own graveyard better than green does. And I think that's kind of the same problem now we're seeing with Standard, is these cards have just pushed out every other card. Alrighty, with that rant out of the way, we'll go back to the deck tech. So that was the changes with Loris. Golden Egg just synergizes better because you can cast it from your graveyard, and it doesn't cost you a white. It can make us be a little more greedy on our mana base with playing cards like Radiant Fountain. And then that also allows us with Tiamat Calls of the Dead to be a very synergistic card in this deck. It's going to be able to fill our graveyard full of the Ghouls, and we also have the option of casting back the Griffin Ares from Valorous the Dream Den, because it is a converted mana cost 2 or less. So if these do get milled, don't sweat it. We can have ways to cast them back. It also casts back the Charming Prince, which allows you to gain 3 life, which then gets back your 2/2 Griffins or your Ghouls that have gone to the graveyard. The one card that I still am on the fence about is Kenrith the Return King. It's just too cute not to put in this deck, with the ability to put your Lurrus back in the battlefield for 5 mana, gaining 5 life for 3 mana. It does exactly what this deck wants to do. It probably doesn't deserve a slot in this deck. It probably should be another control card, or I am not even quite sure at what point what the last card would be. Maybe another full package of Lurrus. Lurrus also does have that lifelink, being a 3/2, can get the cycle going as well. So even attacking it and sacrificing your Lurrus could be a way to get the Ghouls back, or the Griffins triggered. So the other card that we do like in this deck is Murderous Rider. Murderous Rider does have the synergy with the Tiamat Calls of the Dead by adding that life and scrying when it does pop. And it does also have the ability with the Elspeth to be plussed and then actually gain you enough life when it attacks in to then trigger off your Ghouls. So lots of synergies in this deck. We still have the Cling to Dust. We still have the Erebos Interventions. We still have the Charming Prince, Griffins, Ghouls. But this is just a different way, going less on the control route and more on the putting the threats out early. And I think it actually does work a little bit better in this format. Like, we are giving some ground versus some decks, but we are definitely getting better against other decks with providing that early threats and being able to put the pressure you need in this format. So I just barely went against a Dimir deck before I started recording this, and it was just a Shark Typhoon. And so Shark Typhoon is the win con plus now I'm thinking Ashiok. So that was the difference, was these early threats like the Triton coming out and providing that aggression that the opponent had to react, rather than, draw a bunch of cards off Shark Typhoon or make a bunch of tokens. They had to use their Shark Typhoons early to be blockers. And that's the difference between waiting for my opponent to get their win cons down versus me establishing a lot of threats. So the biggest change, though, the new additions for this particular video series is we're going to try the Triome. I thought the Triome is just cute with Kenrith to give things haste. We'll see if that ever comes into play here. And the cycling too. You do tend to mana flood, and this might be a way for us to draw some cards at a pivotal point. If it doesn't, it also does have the ability to have the Castle Locktwains come into play untapped with the Triome. So that's another thing to think of. But I have cut a Scoured Barrens and a Radiant Fountain. These have some pretty neat little synergies in this deck, because the Radiant Fountain gains you 2 life, and that means if you cast it on the same turn as a Triton, you're actually going to trigger off these Ghouls. Same thing can be said with the Scoured Barrens. Same thing, the Murderous Rider with the lifelink. I've also had the scenario with the Tiamat Calls of the Dead only scrying for maybe 1 life, gaining 1 life and scrying 1 life because they've already taken care of a Ghoul or a zombie token, and then a Radiant Fountain can then get you up above that life total to then start the chain. So there you have an in-depth deck tech for this particular deck. Sideboard, I have made some changes. Like, Dress just sucks in this format. I think Agonizing Remorse is just better, because you can hit more stuff with it. This is going to come in versus Food. It's going to come in versus Ugin decks. It's arguable that this should be the card in the main and Erebos Intervention in the sideboard. I will entertain that, because I think it actually does. It is relevant versus every matchup. So you can mix and match however you feel. Elspeth Nightmare could also be that card. It's super, super good versus many matchups. It's not even really dead versus the creature-less matchups, because oftentimes you can just have it exile their graveyard, which is relevant, as well as just rip out a non-creature card. Extinction Event is going to be a 4 of in the sideboard for this one, because when it's good, it's really good. You're going to bring it in versus Food, and you're going to bring it in versus usually Gruul, just to take care of those early adventure cards. Taste of Death is a new late addition too. Same thing, Gruul and Food. I typically like to bring it in. It's kind of neat here because each player sacrifices 3 creatures and you create 3 food. That's 3 triggers to then get back your Ghouls. Doesn't exile your Ghouls. I'm wondering if this card is going to want more like a 2 over a 3 of in this. And the Hero's Intervention, I am kind of iffy about this card because it does do what we want it to do by destroying artifacts and enchantments. and gaining you life, so it's got that addition if you do need to cast it on yourself. However, once they've established like a Great Hinger and Embercleave, it's usually too little too late. What has been getting me lately is not even the first Great Hinger or Embercleave, it's that second, third, or fourth copies. So I've answered early copies, and that's just what makes these cards so busted is they're really good in multiples. Like Great Hinge is just such a powerhouse that they... you answer the first one. I mean, it's almost the point that I wish that they would add a new type, like going back to like Enchant Worlds or Legendary. Like literally one copy in your deck is all you can do. If they want to put that sheer power on a card, maybe that's the only way they can balance it at this point, because it's the second Embercleave, the third Embercleave that is getting the is winning the game after you answer the first couple ones. Anyway, there is my over deck tech here. Too much talk, less play. More play, less talk. Let's get to some plays. So, like I said, Rogues is pretty good. I want to see if I can get a repeat of that Ashiok deck. This deck is pretty, like I said, pretty much 50-50 for Platinum. You're going to stick in Platinum. This deck I don't think will get you through Platinum. There definitely are some bad matchups. Any of the ramp decks are going to just beat you, and Food is very, very tough. Gruul, I think you're unfavorable versus Gruul. Favorable versus Rogues. Favorable versus some Yorions, but other flavors of Yorions are going to be favorable. And you are very favorable versus any other aggro-based deck, though. So like Knights or Red. This is going to be an easy matchup. This is kind of an iffy matchup. We have the Griffin. We have the Charming Prince. You don't want to see Ghouls in your opening hand, but this deck is cursed. So you never mill the Ghouls, you always draw them. That's the curse of this particular deck. So we're going to start off here with a Triome here. It's going to allow any of our castles to come into play untapped. We did get our third land, which is really good. We have a decent hand versus Gruul, and that Lurrus is going to be even better. So we can just go with the, let's go with a Swamp here, and let's establish our Griffin. And we should be in, oh, it's Ramp. I was hoping it was Gruul here with the Shatter Skull, but Ramp is just impossible. This matchup is just impossible. So I did have the Necromentia in the sideboard to rip out their win con, and then their other win con usually gets me. See, like I said, the Silver Smote Ghoul is just cursed. I think we'd rather have another black here. We have white, white, black. So yeah, I'm thinking we just establish good old Ghoul here. It's the most aggressive. Charming Prince would put out 4 power, but if our opponent does kill the Ghoul, then we're able to get it back against most of the cards. But look at our opponent. Our opponent's already at a bazillion lands, and it's our turn 4, and our opponent has 7 lands out. Wizards cannot balance a format. If you're going to make ramp, why put Ugin in the same format? They are just incapable of doing their job correctly. All right, I'll attack in with the Ghoul. And at this point, I might think a Charming Prince is just better to keep up the mana to sacrifice the Ghoul if need be, or we can actually do it right now. I think that is actually the play. So I'm going to go Charming Prince, gain life, and then we'll sack the Ghoul, and it gets it back. And we have a pretty reasonable aggro here, draw cards, so we can hopefully hit a land drop and keep progressing. But, I mean, we're in Ugin territory here. We're almost in territory of... Now they do get their other source for the red. Another migration pack. So, yeah, they've got all... Ay, ay, ay. There is a reason, Wizards, that you quit printing these cards, these explosive vegetations. Oh, boy. All right, so let's go ahead and attack with the team. And I think all we're going to do is just... Oh, it's even kind of a liability to play a Silver Smote Ghoul. So I think the better play here is just going to be Charming Prince. And I am just going to gain 3 life. Yeah, that's all I'm going to do. So my reasoning is I think an Ugin is coming down. So if an Ugin is coming down, we want to be able to sacrifice our Ghoul. Yep. And still be in decent shape.
And you will grow lost to history.
So let's see if our opponent gets tricky and just does for 2. Okay, sweet. Our opponent just did it for 2, which is awesome because now we can just Murderous Rider on the Ugin. and not have to worry about our Ghoul. And it's going to countered by a just Jawari's Disruption, because of course they have that, but it's still okay. We have the second one in our hand, and it did not kill the Ghoul because my opponent was like, oh, he'll just sacrifice it if not. However, we can just Murder Strider this one here. We have the double Murder Strider, so that's all good and dandy. So we've, see, here you go. So I've answered the first Ugin, and it's going to be the second Ugin that's going to get me. But they also have the Beanstalk Giant. This was another design card that I think was very problematic because it just... Yeah, here comes the second Ugin with Genesis Ultimatum. So put out just a natural Ugin or Genesis Ultimatum in hand. Even Shark Typhoon, I think it's going to be too hard for us to beat now. Yeah, because Cultivate puts out a 3/3, gets more lands. We have a Beanstalk Giant that's going to be impossible to deal with. And I think we're pretty much dead here from it. So, like I said, this matchup's impossible. The only like hope is they have a bunch of ramp cards in their hand and not a win con. But I think we are pretty much dead. Because I can go another Ghoul. Yeah, and there's 2 Beanstalks we'd have to deal with, and we don't have enough Murder Riders in the world to deal with it. So, alrighty, no attacks here. We'll just pass it on to our opponent. And then proceed to die to the Beanstalk Giant Shark Typhoon. So you have another Genesis Ultimatum. This card, too. Like, Shark Typhoon just seems like a... just the best in slot of a card. It just seems super pushed. Super, super pushed. So I'm thinking another Beanstalk Giant's going to come down. Another Ugin. Yep, told you the second Ugin would get us. So there is the concession. The other thing with Ramp, too, is it thins your deck out so much. My opponent was down to 30 cards. 30 cards already because of all the Migration Pass getting, 2 cards, all the Cultivates getting 2 cards. I don't know if we go Taste of Death. Taste of Death actually seems okay to get rid of the Beanstalk Giants later on. It seems better than the Extinction Event. I don't know. It looks my opponent's not going the adventure route. I didn't see enough, but Agonizing Remorse is going to come in. Erebus Intervention is going to come in. Cling to Dust is actually kind of weak in this matchup. I don't think we... Like, Kenrith is slow. I don't think we need to go Hero's Intervention because I don't think it's going to be the Great Henge version. It's just going to be the straight-up ramp. So the Shark Typhoon, Ugin, and Genesis Ultimatum. I'm going to try this Taste... No, Taste of Death seems bad, too. It's just... This is just a very weird... Elspeth Nightmare, you could make the argument by ripping those out by putting all 4 of in. But then what do I just die after that point with... Yeah, I'm going to try this Taste of Death. I don't know. I don't know how to beat this matchup. You just don't. You just pray the Agonizing Remorse hit things, but it's just too much value. They just get so much value out of every card, and we're just not quick enough to win. And that's a lot of people's argument for keeping Embercleave in this format, is without Embercleave, you just lose to this deck. Like, Embercleave is keeping this particular deck in check. This version, too, does suffer a little bit from rogues, as they don't have, like, the early control to deal with them, and they can get milled pretty easily. But let's just go with the Triome. Control also does reasonably well. It depends on the control variant. Let's go ahead. See, the Ghoul, of course, wants to be in our opening hand. We can go Castle Locktwain here, and we can go ahead and just Triton, and hopefully Triton hits 2 ghouls. Hits 1 ghoul, we'll take it. So here's kind of a weird play. I think we go Luris. No, we don't. We go the Griffin. Okay, so it is Bone Crusher Giant version. All right. Sort of changes things. So the reason I did the Griffin is we can go Elspeth, gain 5 life next turn. It all depends. So Cultivate coming down. Is that just better? No, it's not. Okay, so black, we do need... I still think I want black. And we're going to go Elspeth. And we are gaining some life here. Because it's going to put out more threats than our 2/1/1s. Get back a 3/1 and a 2/2. And... opponent needs a blue. Yeah, there's just Bone Crusher coming down. See if this Bone Crusher kills the other Elspeth. There's not another one out. Unfortunately, we don't have... do I want 2/1/1s? And to kill Elspeth? No. We're going to go for as much aggression as possible. This should hopefully fire Prophecy on the Griffin. Okay, that's reasonable. This card is so good for these ramp decks too because it allows them to put a land back into play. So we're going to go ahead and attack in. Opponent should block, in my opinion, with the Bone Crusher. So now I have a... Nah, there's no player. We'll just let it die. And I'm wondering if Lurrus is the better play here than a Ghoul. I actually am going to go on the limb here and try to go to Mirror so we can get some more stuff in the graveyard for a big Elspeth play. Might be the wrong play, but we do need to start building up our graveyard. Lurrus gets interesting with being able to cast back another Griffin Ari, but we're just dead to Ugin, unfortunately. And we are milling everything here. So Charming Prince I still think is a better mill, because I'd rather get Lurrus back with the Griffins. So that's the play. See if another Bone Crusher Giant comes down here. Fire Prophecy. Okay. I'm still going to go another Timurit. I don't know if that's the right play or not. Yeah, because if we go Ugin, Lurrus gets us back in this maybe. And this one we can get rid of the Timurit Calls the Dead. So if I draw a land, do I just go Elspeth and start getting in for some damage? We've got 0 damage down. Opponent has more cards in hand than we do. Shatter Skull takes care of those. Okay, so we get a Golden Egg. I think is something we don't want on the top. It's interesting. No, I think it's not a top. I think we need some sort of play here. And Elspeth is probably the right play. I think I do. Well, we do have to play around a Jari, so I'm gonna go Ghoul. Let's see, what can Lurrus do? Lurrus can bring back... Do I have to play around Ugin? If they just have Ugin, I just die. Because this will get us another 2 life. Yeah, I think it's Ghoul. I think Ghoul is the play. And then we'll just end the turn. Because this allows us to gain 2 life. That means any land after this. And an Ugin wouldn't be... Yeah, hindsight, I probably should just go for the most aggression possible. And yeah, we just got to go for it. Triome was not what I wanted to see. I'll take a Charming Prince on top. It works with the Lurrus. So, still think we want lands. So we'll just put it into play tapped. And then go to attack here. And that hits. So I think the better play here is just to sack the Ghoul. That draws the Charming Prince. And the Charming Prince can gain us 2 life. So, ramp, I think one of the issues with ramp that Wizards doesn't understand is it used to be such a liability for anything over converted mana cost 5. They just didn't, in the scope of how Magic played out over a series of 5, 6, 7 turns, usually the average game is about 7 turns. those higher converted mana costs didn't make sense to play at their current power level. And the way that they were justified was ramp. Could cheat them out a bit earlier. But it seems like Wizards of the Coast has balanced some of these cards based on the fact that they need to be good without ramp. So what that's done is they've really pushed these 5, 6, 7, 8 converted mana cost cards, and then also brought back ramp. And so they did kind of the worst in my opinion for these. Either has to be one or the other. Either have to have strong ramp to be able to cheat these cards in earlier, and then have the natural curve of power level, like a 5-drop has to be slightly better than a 4-drop, that's slightly better than a 3-drop, or they have to get rid of ramp and allow for less of a just a blowout for these higher converted mana cost cards, if that makes sense. I'm trying to talk and think at the same time. I think that Elspeth is the right play here. And we will create some... You know what? We'll gain 5 life. That will force out a... No, we'll force out a 0. I think a 0 is better here. So Ugin can go 0 rather than plussing up. Yeah, Ugin can also go +3 and kill Elspeth. Okay, but that allows me to Elspeth back and kill Ugin. So I think that's still the play. So what don't we need? An Agonizing Remorse, Timurit, and a Taste of Death. I think there's a big shark in here. Split the 2. Gotta be like a Fire Prophecy or something. Still the better play in my opinion, though. Soulseer, okay. Well, Ugin takes 3. And it puts Ugin in a weird position. Not really, I guess. Okay, sure. Some of these people, the way that they use counter spells. I mean, I guess it did counter me from drawing a card. So how is Ugin going to do this? +3 on the token? +3 on the Elspeth. That still allows me some play here. Because I could do it again. Has a Bone Crusher. Sure. Where's our Murderous Riders when we need one? So this is weird again. I think it's just Elspeth and create some tokens. And just keep... No, we gotta go for... Oh, because Lurrus is weird because then everything just gets exiled. I think we just have to go for good old Silver Smote. And... yeah, Lurrus just ends up not being good in this one. We have to draw a Murderous Rider. We've gone through most of our... Did we get rid of one of them? Or none of them? Okay, all of our Murderous Riders are just at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and cycle this sucker. There we go. Now we're in decent shape. Other than I have a feeling like the other cards in hand are going to be a... Ugin. So once again, we'll take care of the first Ugin and then die to the Ugins after this. So now I think that Lurrus is the right play. And I could go Golden Egg because that could actually... No, we'll get the Griffin out right now. See if another counterspell. No counterspell happens there. We're in decent shape. Even Shark Typhoon, we're decent against because my opponent's almost out of cards. So... let's get some Griffins going. I do have the... second Lurrus. My opponent did not block. That is interesting. Did not have a card to run either. So... we have one Ghoul, 2 Ghouls that are coming back, which, yep, that's fine. I don't even need a Triton. No, Triton's fine. Triton allows me to Possibly found another one. And that way, we have a lot of aggression here. What does my opponent have in hand? It's got to be another Ugin. It's got to be another one. I hate this card. What a dumb reprint. It's just a stupid reprint to enter back into Standard. Just stupid, stupid reprint. So now we get everything exiled, both of our Griffins. And now we're back to the same problem. We need to find another Murderous Rider. Okay, so our opponent does kill his own Bone Crusher and the Shark Tornado. Unfortunately, we do have a ton of lands left.
You are too dangerous to roam.
Let's see what's in your hand. I have a feeling it's just lands. Maybe a third Ugin, a seventh Ugin in hand. Because this deck is running basically 8 Ugins. Yeah, the smashing's fine to get rid of. So, what do we need to do here? So, I guess it should have done Scoured Barrens here. Man, I don't really want to exile many of these. I have 2 golden eggs in here. The Triton's not going to do anything for me. So this is interesting. No, I just create the tokens.
If you are going to fight, fight beside me.
So my opponent top deck's a Genesis Ultimatum. Womp womp. I was like, oh, we might be able to come back into this game if we don't get a big... And I'm sure my opponent drew another Genesis Ultimatum off of that Genesis Ultimatum is the issue. Because I don't know what other cards... Well, we did see some other cards. Yeah, I don't think... Where's our other Murderous Riders? This is getting ridiculous with that. I think at this point, we have to try to find... I don't want to go the... So we got to go Lurrus. Which allows us to Charming Prince and gain some life. And that gets everything back. Except there's a 7/7 Shark that came off of that. And Ugin's just going to go for Lurrus. We're just out of cards, too. And there's still 2 more Ugins, 3 more Genesis Ultimatums into my opponent's deck. Just too much value off of, you know... Wow, my opponent's going to go for this. It's going to exile everything with a Bone Crusher Giant. Alright, that actually I'm okay with. I'm not okay with drawing Scoured Barrens. Or the Bright Climb Pathways. My opponent's going on this Beanstalk Giant route. Biggest issues we've run out of, like, relevant... Oh, yep, I knew it was another Genesis Ultimatum. Which finds Beanstalk Giant and probably another Genesis Ultimatum. And it's got Ugin. So we basically have to draw another Murderous Rider. And Lurrus is probably not the right route to go. So, I'm going to do Lurrus, though. That's 28. No, I just died at... Ugin's at 3. Yeah, I just died at the Beanstalks. Because this allows me to gain 3 life. No, I didn't find it either. So that can gain me 5 life. And then I don't have enough for it if I try to draw a card. Okay, I can try to draw a card with the... No, I'm not gaining any life here. I don't think I can do it because I'm 1 land short. So I shouldn't have played that Scoured Barrens. Because what my opponent needs to do is just kill the Loris and I die. I go down to 1. Because he's coming to play tapped. Finds another shark too, huh? Yeah, and there's nothing I do. So if I went to play the Scoured Barons, let's see why sacrificing the Ghoul, what I would have found. I found a Murderous Rider. I'm going to be kicking myself because then we could have killed the Ugin, but then we have a lot of damage coming from these. See what we would have found. No, wouldn't have found it anyway. Okay, so that's that. That's that. Yeah, again, this is another Ugin's another card. Get it out of standard. It doesn't make the format better. It just makes it worse by including it in the format. I think that's how they should evaluate every card. Does this add to anything fun? Do these haymakers really add to the health of standard? And no, they don't. Ugin is something that is like a pioneer or a modern power level card. Something that I think that would go better with that. Something that would go better with a format that has a lot more answers, to be able to rip it out like Thoughtseize, have a lot of more aggressive ways to keep it in check. Standard is in a weird place with this rock, paper, scissors. Like, food just kind of folds to Ugin as well. And people might make the argument that Ugin is necessary to keep food in check, and Embercleave is necessary to keep Ugin in check, and food's necessary to keep Embercleave in check. But it's this awful rock, paper, scissors where none of them to me feel like a tit-for-tat skill-based format. It just seems like haymaker or answer. Haymaker, answer. Haymaker, answer. All right, let's go on to the next one. We'll play a couple more here. Hopefully we can get a Rogues or a Gruul matchup. You can watch. If we get Gruul or food, you can see that I'll lose to the second and third Great Hinges. But that's kind of the reality. I'm actually quite surprised we performed as well as we did on that game number 2. Those ramp decks can they can kind of peter off and not draw. Like, they don't have a Genesis Ultimatum in their opening hand. A lot of times you can just push through. They are kind of an awkward deck at that. But again, they made this removal package too good with the ramp, with the Shadow Skull Summoning being something you can play as a land or a board wipe, and it becomes a very good wipe, at least killing 2 creatures with ramp, because you're ramping out that mana to actually make it better. This is a pretty decent hand here. All right, cool. We're going to go up against red. So do I need to get a blocker out? I don't think so. I think I'm okay here for the next few turns. We do have kind of a slow draw, though. So we'll go Castle Lock Twain and just go a Griffin. And then next turn we can Scour Barons, Charming Prince, gain 3 life. We'll actually be gaining 4 life next turn. So I don't want to see Annex come out this turn. Everything else is pretty okay. But Embercleave is a problem with this deck too. I'll have the Murderous Riders for it though. So just going to hard cast a Bone Crusher, which is fine. So go Scoured Barons. And we will gain 3 life here, putting us back up to 20. And putting us back up to... I'm actually going to let the Bone Crusher Giant go through. It could get Embercleaved here. But it is what it is. We block the Fervent Champion, the Fireblade Charger. We should force out like a Rimrock Knight on the Champion. Now, biggest issue, though, is I don't have a follow-up play to gain more life. We could go for like a Griffin next turn and a Scoured Barons, and then hopefully hit something the following turn. So, yeah, I still think this is the better block. I'm pretty sure Embercleave is coming down here. Just a garbage card. Because even look at the scenario it puts me at the Embercleave here. Okay, Spikefield Hat. Okay, that's gonna wipe my board, and it's still 2 cards for kind of 2 cards, and we're still at a pretty decent life total. Opponent's down to 2 life. We'll be gaining some life this turn. Oh, I do think that this is still the right play. It's just a Murderous Rider. The Mercer, it cost me 4 life versus the stupid Bone Crusher Giant, though, is the issue. The following turn, though, we'll be able to do Griffin RE. Ooh, that might change my play. Yeah, that might change my play. And not go after the Bone Crusher. Yeah. Because that's similar damage and not having the damage of being on the Bone Crusher. Possibly that's not the right play. 2 cards left in my opponent's hand. Lurrus is super good here. Lurrus is perfect. Yeah, I can't get the other Griffin Ari out, though. So... Yep, let's go Lurrus. And we'll gain the 3 life. Now we're in very good shape. So we're trading. I think I will put Lurrus on the Fervent Champion. If it dies, it dies to like a Rimrock. And we'll put the other 2 on the Bone Crusher Giant. So most likely the scenario that's going to happen after this turn is we're going to be left with... Okay, Claim's fine. Claim's not terrible. Okay, how about another Fervent Champion? Oh, how about another Fervent Champion? How about every Fervent Champion? That seems fair. Ay, 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 what a joke. 4 Fervent Champions, huh? Oh, no, it's just the 3. I didn't kill the one, that's correct. So I'm taking 6. Wow, what does my opponent still have in their hand? A Shock, maybe? I think that's the better way to go. I think just both on the Bone Crusher. Yep. I am down to a 4. See what that last card in my opponent's hand is. It's a Rimrock. So that's also a very interesting card. I mean, obviously we're going to gain. Yeah, I can actually do it. I can do it this way. This is pretty good. So I can just, since we gain 2 life, we can now intervention for 1. That gains me the 2 life. Ah, it doesn't matter. We'll still gain life with Charming Prince. And Lurrus does want to attack. Yeah, I'd rather just get the damage in there and get the life because we have blockers. So now I really feel in the driver's seat. A Fervent Champion is dead. We have a Lurrus that my opponent really should be trying to kill. We're going to triple block just in case there's an Embercleave here. No, okay. And we... Man, losing light up the stage has made this deck garbage. Card draw is that important. I think that's another thing the design team is they undervalue card draw of how important it really is. So the Shadow Skull is going to stop what I've got going here. We'll just Murderous Rider. Okay. Opponent's just gonna scoop it up. Scoop it up, huh? Alright, this is where, like, I think we like to play more of the controller out than the problem. So, Kenrith's weird, because I think that by the time we hit 5 mana, we want to be stabilized. So, like, Elspeth and Kenrith, you can justify putting them in here, but it's like the Ghoul is actually weak in this matchup. I don't think Ghoul's where you want to be. Gila's Intervention's fine. Elspeth Nightmare is just a boss in this matchup. So that's how I'd run it. There definitely is justification for Extinction Event, and possibly see if we can make room. So if we take out Murderous Rider, geez. Yeah, it's weird, because Murderous Rider is pretty good too, because of the 3 toughness. It's definitely Golden Egg. I think Golden Egg's weak. So Murderous Rider is going to come in here as a 3 of. We don't want Taste of Death. It's too slow. Elspeth. Elspeth is interesting too, but it's a liability. It's possibly gaining 5 life is where you want to be. We have enough life gain as is, though, with now adding the Healer's Intervention in here. Like, the Ghoul is just bad. The Griffin is okay. It gets worse for sure with cutting all of this stuff. I mean, possibly Griffin's the wrong card to be playing in here, and then just go into another Murderous Rider and I'm overthinking it. I think that just keeping the Extinction Event is right, because there are a lot of odds in this deck. Like, the vast majority of their deck is going to be, besides Robber the Rich, is going to be an odd. And so there will be the scenarios where you can completely board wipe and board wipe the Annex. So Silver Smote 2 is like claim the Firstborn, take it out for claim. Because claim is 3 or less, right? Or is it 2 or less? I'm not sure. Our other cards aren't too... No, it's 3 or less. 3 or less with claim. Our other cards aren't too much of a liability to be claimed. But like cards like Lurrus, I think, are smart to keep in. This hand's... Oh, Timrit probably should have gone out. That's correct. Timrit's probably the card that I should have cut. So, opponent can draw those Fervent Champions like they're going out of style. We'll go Castle Loch Twain. And then we will go... I think Charming Prince is fine here. And we'll gain 3 life. Sure, my opponent's frustrated going up against a life gain deck, but this really isn't a life gain deck as far as a traditional life gain. Like, it's not trying to stabilize through beating aggro through life gain. Life gain is the engine. It's a value deck. So, it does very well with control, which is usually what life gain struggles versus. And here is where we're going to get a lot of value, so I will go Radiant Fountain. And I think when your opponent has a full clutch of cards and hasn't played them, Elspeth Nightmare is just a boss. So they could go Rimrock Knight and keep it alive. They do not. And so this will get rid of an Embercleave. Torbjorn would be my opponent's best play. Okay, they decided not to Rimrock Knight to keep their Fervent Champion alive, huh? So we're going to get rid of an Embercleave, which is the best feeling in all of Magic. Oh, get wrecked, scrub. Alright, so we'll go ahead and put this in play tapped. At this point, like, Timrit's definitely the strong play. Because it doesn't die to the spike. And we can get rid of Mills with Nightmare, which is perfect. That's what also gives Timrit a lot better. And at post sideboards, you get another target with Elspeth's Nightmare. And there is the Scoopy Scoop. Like I said, very easy matchup. Their only hope is like either Torbjorn or Embercleave. And they have to have a good curve. They have to have me having struggle with removal. That's basically the matchup you want to see. But Mono Red isn't very prevalent. Mono Red is in a very bad position because it's terrible versus Gruul and food. You're a good turn behind Gruul. Like, Gruul just does what Mono Red is doing now much, 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 much better. I don't see the point, especially since the mana is super good for Gruul. And you really don't add anything. I don't think Torbjorn puts you over the top, comparatively speaking, to the other cards that you can play out of Gruul. Let's play one more. And it was really the loss of Light Up the Stage. Light Up the Stage hurt Mono Red more than anything rotating. All right, let's see some rogue action here. That's a fun matchup to pair up against with this one. Especially post-sideboard, we can get rid of the Tritons and the stupid... the self-mill. It's definitely keepable. We have the pathway. I could give myself a turn as well with... Okay, yeah, now I don't have to play the Radiant Fountain. So now pathway can just be... I probably should give myself one more turn to see if we drew a Plains, because then we get the Murderous Rider. So this is going to be a Yorion, and this can be a very, very long, grindy matchup. So let's go with the Griffin. We get a little bit better post board. It's all depending on how our opponent, exactly what my opponent is playing. If they're in like Shark Tornado, this is a lot harder for a matchup. If this is Doom Foretold, it's a lot easier of a matchup because Doom Foretold doesn't do a lot versus us. Like Elspeth Nightmare is very annoying. Exiles our graveyard. I have a cool play next turn too. We have the Triton rather than the Charming Prince. Just gonna bring Yorion in, huh? It's a dead card. Let's go ahead and go Radiant Fountain and the Triton, and hopefully gets a Ghoul in the graveyard. It does not, but that's fine. We have a 2-2 and a 2-1. Opponent has not gotten rid of our Griffin with the Core Spirit, the Skyclave. Apparition. If it's an Ashiok build, we do have an answer for Ashiok with Murderous Rider. Really wish there was Vraska's Contempt in the format. That'd be the perfect card for this deck. Like, the instant speed's still weird, though, but you do have the ability to cast it sorcery speed for. Opponent is using their precious time to take a minute to decide to play a Fabled Passage. Well, they're bored, so can't expect them to go quick. And there's that Elspeth Nightmare. Womp womp. Goes after that one. I disagree with that play. Another Murderous Rider, eh? Well, time to get Elspeth out. Nothing in our graveyard gets hit too hard.
I can escape my past no more than I can escape my shadow.
Get some soldiers.
I am proud of my comrades.
Getting them some damage. And we lose just an intervention, which is kind of dead versus this matchup. Extinction Event just gets rid of... It gets rid of my board, I guess, with Extinction Event. If one plays an Extinction Event or a Shatter. Not too worried about a Shatter. Skyclave going on Elspeth? Wrong play, in my opinion.
I could do nothing.
Because I think the Ahri is a little more powerful. We want to be aggressive. If I can get this trade, I'm happy. You can make the argument for killing the Skyclave, get a 4/4 back, but you're running into like Extinction Events at that point. The Ghoul... Yeah, Ghoul is playable here, for sure. I hate this one to get countered, though. That would actually suck. Because we did not hit the land drop. Or even destroyed. Because then it gets... Yeah, that might have been the wrong play. I ran into that one. Okay, so that gets a lot more value off the Elspeth Nightmare. I don't know why I can't mill that sucker with the Triton. So Yorion can get decent value right now, but there's the Omen with Yorion. See, again, this is my issue with this Yorion being a companion, is it didn't cost my opponent anything but 3 mana for a whole extra card. And now it's going to just get so much value when it gets flickered. So Doom Foretold is fine. We end up getting rid of the Triton. And just Charming Prince. Oh, I can't even cast Murderous Rider here. I think we did gain 3 life. Kind of a weird. Scry versus a 2/2. Opponent should kill the... Anything my opponent kills here is fine, though, because it would be flickered. Yeah, I'm definitely okay with that. Kenra's awful right now without having the mana. Ugh, finds another target. Come on, we can find another Doom Foretold. That's a big yikes. So I have to kill both of them. Hopefully Loris can get me back in this. Missing the mana was definitely rough. We'll cast the Timurit. Womp womp. We'll get rid of a Triton. It's the weakest one for getting a Loris back. And we'll attack him with the Griffin. Good news is my opponent's losing 2 valuable targets next turn with the Doom Foretold. Unless they can flash in like another one. But it still is. It's going to be less value. I end up losing one of my cards. It keeps around the Doom Foretold for another turn for my opponent too. And I unfortunately milled 2 black sources. I want to hit a black source. Decided to kill one of their own Doom Foretold, which is fine because now I have a Timurit to sacrifice and possibly can punish that for the... Or they're going to go Yorion Blink Blink. And if that's the case, I'm okay with that too because Kenrith is kind of a liability. Skyclave. Okay, so Skyclave on the Timurit. So now I'm discarding a card, which is going to be Kenrith. I actually don't know if it's Kenrith. I'm going to go Murderous Rider. I'm going to keep Kenrith around because Kenrith might be something that can get me a ton of value. So unfortunately... So should trade token for token. Fortunately, it was a Scoured Barrens. Oh, so there's no value. I think my opponent's trying to wait for value for the Skyclave. For Yorion. We also do have to worry about Dance of Mance. And I think there's a Dance of Mance in my opponent's graveyard because, yeah, I don't know why they would... Yeah, because that's 5 exactly if they draw a land. So we're going to die to Dance. So I might actually bring in Extinction Event because Extinction Event does super good versus Dance. It just kills them all because they're all at the same converted mana cost except for Elspeth's Nightmare. Or I think Helad's Intervention probably works just better. Well, we called it. Not sure I can do anything against this. I can give myself a blocker, though, in the form of... I actually have 2 blockers. So I will discard the other Murderous Rider. If anything gets me back in this, it's going to be Kenrith. Oh, no, I have to discard it anyway. Yep, that's true. That is going to be game. I'm going to go on to the game number 2. I will bring in Elspeth's Nightmare. It can take care of the Skyclave Apparitions and get rid of the graveyard. Agonizing Remorse also seems pretty decent. But I don't want to, like, kill my own ability to... Elspeth. I think Elspeth comes out here. The Erebos Interventions come out. Cling to Dust is fine. Kenrith is too slow and doesn't have... I'm going to get rid of Golden Eggs in this one. I think there's going to be plenty of targets. Yeah, Golden Eggs are fine to get rid of. Well, Golden Eggs are actually good versus what my opponent's doing. So Murderous Rider actually seems very weak. But it leads... I have no answer now to Yorion, which means I have no answer for being able to stop it from Elspeth's getting it back. So, like, one of Extinction Event, no, that doesn't seem good either. Taste of Death doesn't seem good. I think we will play this out like this, though. Just get rid of like one golden egg, or... golden egg seems fine. Timber Calls the Dead's actually pretty terrible. Well, is it? We'll keep in the 3. Now, I also can kick myself if my opponent brought in Ashiok, because then I do want... Yeah, Murder Strider probably needed to stay in there instead of Timorits. It's keepable. It's slow, but it's keepable. Best case scenario is drawing an untapped land, of course. And we did. So now we can just go Charming Prince and Scry. And I'm going to try to hit a land here too. Yep, perfect. Did its job. Because now we have a Timorit next turn. There's a Golden Egg. So I can still Timorit this turn. And, yep. I don't have any point for double either. So double white. Oh, did I even bring in Heloads? I don't even... Yeah, let's go double. It doesn't matter here because we have double when the next one hit. I don't know. I definitely should have brought in Helo's Intervention if I forgot. Elsith Nightmare gets exiled here. Next turn we have a Charming Prince and an Agonizing Remorse, which I think is fine. Because we still don't have any value off the Charming Prince. So... Alright, opponent. It's asking if you want to sacrifice your golden egg, my dude. This is, of course, the Triton that goes away. So, actually, I think we're going to go Scoured Barrens because that allows us a Lurrus play the following turn. Oh, I should have done... No, we have Radiant Fountain next turn anyway. So, we're going to Agonizing Remorse, see if it gets countered. Of course, we're going to, like, take a Dance of Mance here. It does get negated. Comes down to 14. Extinction Event would be kind of messy. Brought in negates, huh? And I think the negates are fine for... I prefer when my opponent does stuff like that. Bring in negates. It did take care of my Agonizing Remorse, but if there was any other... Like, that card, I think any other card would be more of an issue for me to deal with than negate. Now, I've got some decisions here. I think the best is Lurrus. And then Lurrus allows for a Griffin. Now, I could be running into like something that then takes care of my Ghoul. However, this is going to get a 2-2 and a 3-2 back. Didn't like to see the Omen. My opponent did miss a land drop. But this is going to help set them up for possibly an Extinction Event. The two at the bottom definitely think they're searching for a land. So worst case scenario is untap land, Extinction Event on odd, but it's also kind of an awkward Extinction Event. Yeah, because now we just get to attack in, and we'll do an Agonizing Remorse. And hopefully get rid of whatever can take care of us. And that's the Skyclave. Weird. So Elspeth conquers death. Might actually... So Skyclave takes care and gets a blocker. Yep, so it's the Skyclave. Yeah, so my opponent would need to draw this. And then playing a Charming Prince here allows us to scry because we don't need the life. And I don't care about either one of these, actually. Oh, I think we've won this one. Because what can my opponent do? They have to... So if they top deck an answer, Yeah, they couldn't top deck an answer. So land, Yorion dies, Doom Foretold dies, Elspeth dies. So only be land, and then the wrong type of land for the other board wipe that would work. Oh, Murderous Rider, Murderous Rider, Murderous Rider, Murderous Rider. Because Timur Calls the Dead seems to be pretty good at doing what I want this deck to do. Murderous Rider, though, I don't see any drawback to some Murderous Riders. I'm not sure if it's a 3 of. Possibly Elspeth Nightmare can just go down to a 2 of. Like, X on that graveyard is super important, though. I'm gonna do a split here. It's iffy. And now actually thinking it's Mire Triton's kind of the weak card. I should have taken that card out. Yeah. That was the right play. So Timrid is just... Yeah, I don't know. Saying I don't know a lot today. I think I should know these matches by now. Unfortunately, though, we didn't take enough of our opponent's time clock away. So that's what these Yorion matchups come down to. It's so grindy that our opponent times out. I actually wish they would have decreased the time on Arena by 5 minutes. I think that 25 is plenty. You don't need the full 30. People can play a little bit faster. Well, of course we can't keep this hand. This one's fine though. Of course we put the Ghoul on the bottom. What is up with the drawing of the Ghouls? Possibly the Ghoul doesn't want to be on the bottom actually, because now I can't get a Ghoul. Block Twain's fine here. Very, very slow. Yeah, I have no way to shuffle my library. That's an issue. Because usually I didn't mind putting those because you can shuffle the Fabled Passage. I ended up cutting the Fabled Passages. Seemed like the weak land in the deck. You really wanted an untapped turn 2-3. So let's get our... Griffins going. Fortunately, there's land. There's not much for us to mill anymore. Luris can still mill some relevant cards, though. And I'm sure one of these is going to get eliminated. Nope, just an Omen. Elspeth Nightmare is actually not too much of a problem at the moment. We have nothing our opponent can actually get. I don't want to run into the eliminate problem. I don't want to run in... Luris is fine to run out here. Yeah, Luris is fine. Opponent takes care of Luris, they take care of Luris. They can't take care of these cards. Luris isn't doing anything at the moment. See if my opponent did not miss a land. So they're going to chuck Yorion in their hand here. Okay. Well, let's see what you got. See if we get negated again. We sure do get negated. So I'm attacking in here because I think that we might as well. Opponent does know I have the Murderous Rider in hand. If it blocks on the Mire, trying to just recast it. Okay, it just gives me more value, I guess. I get a 2/2. I do get things. I'm hoping I just dump 2 lands in the graveyard here. Oh, of course it's a ghoul. But I mean, it was off the top of my library. It's not that. Oh, it comes back. Yeah, that's the best. That was the best case scenario. I was like, that sucks. It's a ghoul, but no, I wanted it to be a ghoul because I gained a life. So that was the perfect mill. Extinction Event would suck here. Well, it'd suck for me. It'd be good for my opponent. Dude, you knew it was in my hand. Why'd you duress? Look at these eyes. The eyes say you know what's in the hand. So I'm not sure what the duress is about unless you somehow need... No, there's nothing that would require you to... whatever. Eliminate on the Lurrus. Yep. And Elspeth Nightmare on the... Should go on the Ghoul here. Oh, no, it can't go on the Ghoul. Yep. That's fine. So we have a interesting play. Oh, man, I don't have the double. So I think the right play... Do I want to put this in their hand with the Yorion? I think they did, right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. No, they didn't. Is this still a companion? Looks like it's in their hand, though. I could Murderous Rider attacking for 5. Healing Intervention, unfortunately, is dying. Unless I go for a Ghoul. I think the right play here is just sacrifice this Ghoul and hope to hit a land drop. Yep, that's fine. We lose Healer's Intervention, which sucks. So hopefully I can find a way to gain some life next turn. My opponent's not going to lose much out of their graveyard, just an Elspeth Nightmare. We'll lose 2 Elspeth Nightmares. So Yorion's not in hand yet, so opponent's going to put Yorion in hand, which gives me, yeah, it gives me a turn of breathing room. The problem, though, is that Healer's Intervention would have wiped the board if we would have hit the land. Another Murderous Rider. So Elspeth Nightmare does nothing for me either. So let's go Ghoul. And unfortunately, this Ghoul gets exiled. I think it was worthwhile to go for it, though. Because that's 2 life and 2 cards, that or 2 life and a card that my opponent is getting. Unfortunately, I lose the Ghoul, lose the Lurrus. My opponent will lose an Elspeth Nightmare, though. Oh, Yorion did not go in hand last turn. What did my opponent do last turn? Nothing. Opponent's library is getting exiled. Attack in. It's going to be Triton for sure. Unfortunately, that's only 2. And we will end the turn there. Yorion's going to get cast, but I'm going to be able to take care of it with Murderous Rider. Potentially there's like another negate. Elspeth Conquers Death is pretty weak of a card. I know my opponent wants to flash it back, but we get a sacrifice to draw a card. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, that's the only target my opponent could go after. And now we get to rip Yorion out. So my opponent decided the greedy route. See if a negate is still in my opponent's hand. If it is, we have Murderous Rider, though. Extinction Event. Nope, Yorion's better. 'Cause it exiles it. And I got to make the decision whether or not to play the Triome. I wonder if just playing out... I mean, I still need more mana, so I'm going to throw this out. I'm actually thinking that just playing out the Murderous Rider is better. It gives me a lot more options here, because Extinction Event's going to happen on even, and that gives me something to attack in with, and if I get anything like a Radiant Fountain or a Scoured Barrens, it will then allow me to draw, or to get back the skeleton, or ghoul, or whatever it is, out of the sideboard. And if that's, or if not the sideboard, geez, I'm all over the place, out of the graveyard. And then if it's out of the graveyard, these two are out of the graveyard, I also create the 2/2, and then my opponent's in a really weird position. So I think my opponent's play is actually named Odd. Okay, I think Odd is the only winning proposition here. Unfortunately, that's not what we wanted to see. We do get a draw card, though. So it does give us a little more outs with this Castle Locthwain. I'm going to do that rather than going for, like, a Murderous Rider. Oh, perfect. See? Boom. There's our out. And we can even sacrifice the Ghoul. So that gives the Golden Egg is kind of a desperation for my opponent just to gain 3 life. Dance of Mance doesn't get him back in this. Neither does another Extinction Event. Extinction Event kind of does. Actually, another Extinction Event is pretty good. But, yeah, what in the world do they have in their hand to get them out of this scenario? They have to have another removal spell. So I'm thinking like Eliminate's coming on a Murderous Rider. It's going to be a Shark Typhoon. So Shark Typhoon does not do it because we do have another Murderous Rider in there, and that should be game. Does get to draw a card, yeah, which is 2 mana. So Eliminate. My opponent could have actually drawn a card and eliminated and stayed in this game, but that actually takes it down. So you didn't get to see the Rogue matchup, but we got to see how it works versus Yorion and versus aggro, which is exactly where this deck is good. The problem is, though, that Ramp, Food, and Gruul are still a huge chunk of the meta. A huge, given any given week, they could be 2/3, 3/4 of the meta. And then it's, like I said, it's rock, paper, scissors that Rogues can slide in there when Gruul is not doing that well, because Rogues does fairly good versus both Food and Ramp. So when those start to slide back in, then Rogues can take over, which is, I think, is what we're at this week, is like Rogues is the top deck according to MTG Goldfish. But all in all, though, I'm very impressed with how this deck is run. There's a huge disadvantage by trying to brew around cards because we don't have access to Embercleaves, Great Hinges, things like that just push those type of decks over the top. And we're playing strictly worse cards, just trying to make the synergies be as impactful as possible. And I think that we actually did find a better brew this week than we did last week with that more control route. Let me know in the comment section below any changes you would make. And yeah, we'll be back again with a fresh new brew. If you have any suggestions for a card for me to brew around, whether it be historic or standard, I don't know if I want to reinstall MTGO at this point and go into like Pauper and stuff like that, but that could be something in the future that we could revisit. So hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.